Okay, this is MOvember, day 30, last video. So I'm going to attempt to do Deb Dana's polyvagal flip chart. There you go, that's a tongue twister for this last video. Now, the Polyvagal Theory, a very famous book, Dr. Stephen Porges, as one of the interpersonal neurobiologists that is traveling the world, Dr. Dan Siegel, Dr. Alan Shaw, Dr. Ed Tronick, and we've got Stephen Porges. Now, Stephen Porges has got a huge profile online. You can see lots of great talks by him. This book is really, as it says there, neurophysiological foundations of emotions, attachment, communication, and self-regulation. Now, Stephen certainly has championed Deb Dana's work, and Deb's got her own the Polyvagal Theory in Therapy and a great workbook, the Polyvagal Exercises for Safety and Connection. So she also made this flip chart. Now, I haven't read through this before, so I'm going to do my best, and this will be an odd MOvember video, but let's give it a go. Now, on the back for therapists, it has something to read, and so it's for clients to see. So I don't know, I don't want to blow it out, but I'll put it a little closer, but I'll read it to you. So on the back it says, Polyvagal Theory provides us an updated map of the autonomic nervous system, defining how this system shapes experiences of safety and impacts ability for connection. Polyvagal Theory gives therapists a way to bring the autonomic nervous system directly into therapy and helps clients become active operators of their own nervous systems. The stories clients tell themselves about who they are and how the world works begin in the autonomic nervous system. Information is sent through the autonomic pathways from the body to the brain, where it is translated into the beliefs that shape daily living. The brain takes the autonomic information and creates a story to make sense of what is happening in the body. If you want to change the story, you start by changing the state. So, the journey continues, like show and tell. The autonomic nervous system looks for context, choice, and connection in order to find safety and regulation. When one of these is missing, a sense of unease develops and the autonomic nervous system prepares for protection. Explicitly attending to context, choice, and connection is important to the success of the therapy process. And so these are the things that I'm going to read through now, the context, choice, and connection. Context. Clients don't often ask why the therapist is doing something in a certain way, and the therapists don't always think to offer that information. By providing information about why, what, and how, therapists are giving the context the autonomic nervous system needs to feel safe and engage in the therapeutic process. Choice. When choice is restricted or when there is a feeling of being trapped, the autonomic nervous system senses danger and enacts a survival response, where to sit, proximity, focus for the session, modality to use, and the pace of work are examples of choices therapists can routinely offer. I know when we do disclosure with sex addicts and betrayal trauma spouses, we always make sure that the PTSD, the spouse needs to be able to have that choice to feel safe as we set up the room. Connection. The therapist's ability to be in a ventral vagal regulation and offer that regulating energy to clients is the key to the success of therapy. And I know in brain spotting, absolutely it's the focus of the work to make sure we're in a regulated state. So connecting with a client, tracking moments of disconnection and returning to connection is the foundation of the therapeutic relationship. Bringing these moments into explicit awareness, increasing safety. Actually, it reads as, let me read that again. Bringing these moments into explicit awareness increases safety. So co-regulation, neuroception, and the autonomic hierarchy are the organizing principles of Polyvagal Theory. Co-regulation is the foundation of the autonomic regulation. So co-regulation is the foundation of autonomic regulation. Developmentally, co-regulation happens before self-regulation, and even after gaining self-regulating skills, there is a lifelong need for co-regulation. Neuroception is the word Stephen Porges created to describe the way the autonomic nervous system takes in and responds to information. Different from perception, which uses the thinking parts of the brain, neuroception is detection without awareness. The three response states of the autonomic nervous system are organized in a hierarchy. Clients move in and out of ventral vagal, sympathetic, and dorsal vagal states in predictable ways. Two primary experiences coexist in the autonomic nervous system: the biological need for connection and wired-in survival responses. Sometimes these actively work together and other times they work in opposition to each other. The autonomic nervous system is shaped in early relationships and continues to be shaped by ongoing experience. In the therapy session, the therapist's and the client's autonomic nervous systems are engaged in a conversation, continually broadcasting and receiving cues of safety and danger. The therapist's ability to be regulated and offer regulation to clients is essential to the process of co-regulation. Outside of therapy, the client's autonomic nervous system continues to send the search for the cues of safety and danger in connection with other nervous systems. Neuroception, the internal surveillance system, searches for cues of safety and danger inside, outside, and between. Neuroception listens to what biological systems are doing inside the body and what is happening in the immediate environment, out into a larger environment, and to what is happening in the relationship between people, between nervous systems. Neuroception leads to changes in the autonomic states, emotions, behaviors, and stories. By bringing perception to the consequences of neuroception and making the implicit autonomic experience explicit, autonomic patterns become clear and can be mapped, tracked, and ultimately shaped. Each survival state brings important actions when working in a regulated way. The autonomic nervous system enacts the response necessary for the present moment situation. When the autonomic nervous system has been shaped in an unsafe environment, habitual responses that are either too much or too little are a common result. Neuroception often activates in response to something that has a familiar flavor from the past. To bring discernment to the process of neuroception, use the question, in this moment, in this place, with this person or people, is this response needed? Evolution. Just like the brain, the autonomic nervous system was built over time, with newer systems added onto older ones. The earliest parasympathetic dorsal vagal state used immobilization to survive. The sympathetic nervous system developed next, adding the mobilizing strategies of fight and flight. The most recent addition, the parasympathetic ventral vagal state, brought the ability to find safety in communication and connection. So the hierarchy, the autonomic nervous system works in a predictable hierarchy. At the top is a ventral vagal, the state of safety and connection. When clients are confronted with a challenge that overwhelms the capacity of their ventral vagal system to maintain regulation, they move down one step into the mobilization of the sympathetic nervous system and some form of fight or flight. And if that doesn't resolve the challenge, the final move is to the bottom of the hierarchy, into the immobilization and the disconnection of the dorsal vagal system. From the bottom of the hierarchy, to return to the state of ventral vagal regulation, clients have to safely move through some of the mobilizing energy of the sympathetic nervous system. The ability to successfully adapt to the changing environment relies on the autonomic nervous system's ability to respond and recover. Clients travel this hierarchy many times a day in small and sometimes extreme ways. Changes in the autonomic states in response to the challenges of everyday life are a normal experience. For many clients, the move out of ventral vagal regulation leads to being stuck in a state of sympathetic or dorsal vagal dysregulation, unable to find a way back to the safety and connection of the ventral vagal state. The clinical goal is not to always be in a state of ventral vagal regulation, but to be able to flexibly navigate moving down and back up the hierarchy. The Vargas means wanderer in Latin. Vargas is the main component of the parasympathetic nervous system. The Vargas is the cranial nerve that comes from the brain and exits the skull, that begins in the brainstem and then wanders through the body, connecting with multiple organs. The vagal pathways are bidirectional, with 80% of the information traveling from the body to the brain. The Vargas is divided in two parts. From the diaphragm upwards, and the ventral vagus connects with the heart, lungs, larynx, and pharynx. From the diaphragm downwards, the dorsal vagal connects to the stomach, liver, spleen, kidney, colon, and intestines, and is responsible for the function of the digestive system. In daily function, the ventral vagus creates healthy homeostasis, and the dorsal vagus brings healthy digestion. In a survival response, the dorsal vagus moves the body into conservation mode, slowing heart rate, impacting breathing, disturbing digestion, creating a sense of disconnection, numbing, collapse, a sense of going through the motions without being present. The sympathetic nervous system is a spinal nerve system. The nerves originate in the spinal cord that helps regulate heart and breath rhythms. It works with the ventral vagus system to bring needed energy to navigate daily activities. When triggered out of normal daily function into a survival response, the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal, is activated, pumping cortisol and adrenaline throughout the body. The ability to recognize and regulate autonomic states is fundamental to the success of treatment and to safely navigate daily living. Each state has its own emergent properties. From a state of protection, sympathetic mobilization, or dorsal vagal disconnection, survival is the only goal. These adaptive survival responses close the system to connection and to change. From a state of connection, ventral vagal regulation and social engagement, health, growth, and restoration are possible. Each state has a continuum of responses. The ventral vagus is enabled to respond when there is a neuroception of safety. The emergent properties of a ventral vagus state bring a sense of connection to self, others, and the world, and spirit, curiosity, compassion, self-compassion, and engagement. The sympathetic state of mobilization activates from the neuroception of danger. The emergent properties of sympathetic activation bring a drive towards action in some form of flight or fight, and include features of anxiety and danger. The dorsal vagal survival state of immobilization, shutdown, and collapse comes from a neuroception of life threat. The emergent properties of dorsal vagal bring a quality of disconnection and disappearance. The social engagement system is formed through the linking of cranial nerve X, Vargas, and cranial nerve V, trigeminal. All right, I hope I got that right. A cranial nerve V2, facial, cranial nerve 4, the glossopharyngeal, and there you'll have to, any doctors watching this, if they do, forgive me, and the cranial nerve 6, or is it 11, accessory. Never let a dyslexic guy read Roman numerals. The social engagement system through the ears, eyes, voice, facial expression, and head movement both signals and searches for signs of welcome and warning. Eyes broadcast the state of the system, sending signals of welcome or signs of danger. A face with expression sends clear messages. A face without expression, without movement, commonly triggers a survival response. The natural tilt to the head is a sign of safety and an invitation to connection. Tone of voice, known as prosody, emerges from an autonomic state and reveals the intention that lies beneath the words. The autonomic nervous system listens to intonation before the brain takes in information. The ventral vagal and sympathetic systems work together to activate the state of play. Play exercises the vagal break and strengthens the ability to move between activity and calm. If sympathetic mobilization overwhelms the capacity of the vagal break, the excitement of play quickly turns from fun to fear. Play uses the social engagement system to regulate mobilization. Stillness is a complicated autonomic activity. The challenge is to become still without being pulled into shutdown. To become safely still, the dorsal pathway brings immobilization and the ventral pathway adds the sense of connection. These two circuits work together to support experiences of intimacy and social behaviors that require stillness. The purple pathway in the image is the ventral vagal circuit going to the heart's pacemaker, the sinoatrial node of the heart. Its job is to slow resting heart rate to between 60 to 80 beats per minute and to regulate how much sympathetic energy coming through the sympathetic cardiac nerves represented by the green pathway. And it is available in the system moment to moment. Because of this regulating action, the vagal pathway is known as the vagal break. Using image and movement helps to understand the vagal break and feel the rise and fall of energy and activation. Besides the brakes on the bicycle, other commonly used images include opening and closing a door or a window, using a dimmer switch or a volume control, raising or lowering a bridge. With an image or movement, clients can practice using their vagal break to increase energy and meet a challenge from the safety of the ventral vagal state. The ventral vagal system holds the sympathetic and dorsal vagal systems in its influence. When the ventral vagal system is active, the other two systems are able to work in the background, doing their neuroreactive everyday jobs, and clients are able to effectively engage with the world. I was just going to grab a drink of water. It's a lot of reading. When the vagal break is unable to hold and the system moves into sympathetic mobilization, the emergent properties of the ventral vagal state are no longer accessible. When a client moves out of the ventral into sympathetic, biology restricts options for response, activates fight and flight, and takes away capacity for social engagement. When mobilization of the sympathetic system doesn't resolve the challenge, the autonomic response is a move into dorsal vagal shutdown. In this state, biology brings disconnection from the self, others, and the environment, and a move out of the present moment. Trauma. Now, trauma impacts the autonomic nervous system both in acts of commission, things done to a person, and acts of omission, neglect, and unpredictable connection. Since connection is a biological imperative, chronic disconnection is traumatic. When opportunities for co-regulation are intermittent or dangerous, clients don't learn the skill of co-regulation and have to depend on self-regulation. Then, instead of emerging from the safety of the ventral vagal state, self-regulation is based in the survival response of the sympathetic or dorsal vagal state. When the autonomic nervous system has been shaped by trauma, The client response patterns are biased towards protection and survival rather than connection and social engagement. There are two common automatic or autonomic response patterns seen in clients. Some clients live with the habitual sympathetic activation and are unfamiliar with the ventral vagal state. Entering into ventral vagal regulation can bring a flavor of danger. To build the capacity to safety, stay in ventral vagal regulation and explicitly recognize micro movements of ventral vagal regulation when they happen and bring co-regulation to the experience. We notice when you and your client are sharing a moment of ventral vagal safety and connection and name the experience. Clients who live with a habitual dorsal vagal immobilization often find the beginning move upwards out of shutdown into some mobilizing energy to be frightening, participating a return to collapse. With these clients, work with the titrated experience of activation and use of co-regulation to provide the needed connection to safety, continue the move through the mobilization into regulation. Resilience is an outcome of being able to flexibly navigate the autonomic hierarchy. It is a normal, everyday experience to move down and up the autonomic ladder many times a day. Suffering happens when we are pulled into a survival response and get stuck there. Well-being comes from recognizing moments of dysregulation and connecting with resources to return to regulation. We make sense of the world by making comparisons. It is a normal part of daily experience and helps us place ourselves in regulation with others. There are two common pathways of responding to a comparison experience. One pathway travels down the autonomic hierarchy away from safety. The other maintains a ventral vagal state and an active social engagement system. In a ventral vagal state, clients can savor the experience of regulation. They have an ongoing sense of connection and curiosity about others. In this active ventral vagal experience, neurobiology supports social connection, communication, and cooperation. The story is one of abundance. When clients move out of regulation of the ventral vagal, they move out of abundance and into a mindset of scarcity. In a state of sympathetic mobilization, clients move into a downward comparison where their survival depends on being better than everyone else. To move out of this sphere, help your client first recognize the state and then discharge some energy safely. The ventral vagal break has to re-engage to move out of the story of protection. In a state of dorsal vagal disconnection, clients move into an upward comparison and a belief that they can never compete with someone else. To begin the move out of this story of hopelessness and upward towards regulation, engage with your client in a small act of mobilization or help them remember a moment of safe connection. The personal profile map answers the question of where am I? The personal profile map helps clients identify their placement on the autonomic hierarchy. Now let me just move this back around a bit. There we go. The autonomic hierarchy. Let me find where. This map creates the basic skills necessary for recognizing autonomic states, and with the personal profile map, clients describe their somatic thinking, feeling, and acting landmarks for each state. Directions for completing. For each section, have your client choose a colored dry erase marker that represents the autonomic state and ask your clients to remember a time when they felt the sense of activation in that state. For sympathetic or dorsal vagal, invite just enough activation into mind and body awareness to get a flavor for the state. For ventral vagal, bring the full experience into mind and body awareness and let the state come to life. Map sympathetic and dorsal states first and end with mapping the ventral vagal state. Whenever you're working with an autonomic hierarchy, the rule is always end the process in ventral. As your clients map each section, have them fill in the corresponding space on the ladder, describing body sensations, emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. What happens in their body? What do they do? What do they feel? What do they think and say? Ask how sleep, eating, and use of substances or addictive behaviors is impacted. After your clients complete each section, have them fill in the sentences "I am" and "the world is." These two sentences identify core beliefs at work in each state. The rectangles on the side of each section of the ladder are for your clients to label dorsal, sympathetic, and ventral in their own words. The Triggers and Glimmers map answers the question, how did I get here? The Triggers and Glimmers map helps clients to discover what activates their autonomic states by identifying what happens in their bodies, in the environment, and in relationships. Triggers are the cues of danger that energize sympathetic and dorsal vagal states, while glimmers are the moments the ventral vagal system lights up. It is important to recognize both and not get caught in the loop of focusing on dysregulation. When completing this map, clients need to be concrete in identifying specific triggers and glimmers. Specificity supports an ability to recognize, anticipate, and work with dysregulation and to replicate moments of regulation. So, directions for completing. For each section, have your client choose a colored dry erase marker that represents the autonomic state. Triggers are what bring clients to therapy, and they are usually easily identified. Have your client begin with the survival response that is most familiar, sympathetic or dorsal vagal, and first map the triggers found in that state and then map the other. When the two protection sections are complete, end by mapping the glimmers in the ventral vagal connection section. The Regulating Resources map answers the question, how do I find my way back to the ventral and stay there? The Regulating Resources map helps clients identify actions in the two categories of self and co-regulation. This map brings attention to the presence and absence of individual and interactive resources, as well as the process of building new regulating pathways. Utilizing resources tones the nervous system, activating the regulating pathways of the ventral vagal state, creating physical and physiological resilience. This map targets identifying resources already present, creating resources where they are absent, and bringing balance to individual and interactive resources. The directions for completing. Have your client choose two colored dry erase markers, one for the left and one for the right side of the map. This creates a clear picture of balance and imbalance between the two regulating categories. Begin with the survival state that is most familiar to your client, sympathetic or dorsal vagal, and map both individual and interactive resources for that state. Then move to mapping the other survival state and by mapping the ventral vagal state. This version of the ladder map is suitable for working with kids. The time and tone map can be used to track the flow of a session and also map a specific experience. Use the horizontal axis to mark the time and the vertical axis to mark the state. To map a session, have your client identify the beginning state. Stop several times during the work of the session to mark where they are on the ladder, and again at the end of the session, and connect all the marks to see the autonomic path of the session. To map an experience, listen with your client as they tell the story of an event. Mark the beginning state, stop to mark the state multiple times as the story unfolds, and then mark the state at the end. Connect the marks to see the autonomic story of the experience. And that is Deb Dana's flip chart for the polyvagal experience. And I've had the pleasure to be in a few master classes with Stephen Porges, and I really enjoyed the experience. It just felt overwhelming just as a regular counsellor to get the depth of the knowledge of these experts that have spent all this time studying the body and the brain so expertly. So I hope this was useful to you. As I said, the the two books that Deb Dana is certainly, they've been endorsed by Stephen Porges. He does the forward on both of them. The Polyvagal Theory in Therapy and the Polyvagal Exercises for Safety and Connection. They will certainly expand on this wonderful resource. And I will sign off for MOvember. This is day 30. I'll do an ending video, but it's always been a pleasure to support men's health and to try and provide each year a bunch of tools. But I'll talk more about that in my final video.